this generation who that stay on their phones and on Twitter and on Instagram. It's like, use those social medias for what they're used for. Don't use it for, well, in my opinion, like, don't think that you're gonna get all your information from that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not realistic.
Welcome back, everybody, to Have a Map. I'm your host, Stephen Napper, and this is my co-host, Joseph Ditterline. And here's our guest, Emmy Award-winning documentarian, videographer, Ryon Horne.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good.
So, Emmy Award winner, right? But can you just kind of tell us about what you do? What's your day-to-day kind of look like in your career?
I am the full-time videographer, producer, director, audio guy at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's my day job. Every day, I'm there to assist our news staff, our breaking news, features, sports, the whole entire departments, all the departments on any type of video needs. It could be quick nuggets, it could be long drawn out documentaries, anything that the newspaper needs visually, whether photos or video. That's my job. I'm one of 7 people in our department. It's a different world than what it used to be when I started there 21 years ago. I think it's probably longer than both of you guys been born or something like that. But now I started there in 2000 as a junior in college, and I started out as like a clerk, answering phones and passing people's mail out and stuff, and just kind of worked my way up through the ranks, doing any and every type of job that was asked of me or wasn't asked of me. My oldest brother, Ryon Horne, who outside of the newspaper, I co-own a independent film company with. He and my middle brother, Byron. So it's Tyson, Byron, and Ryan. I'm the youngest. And it's called the Horne Brothers, and we've been together all of our lives, but we've been working in film and video together since 2006. And I've been mostly focused on video, camera work and editing. Tyson, the oldest, is our visual and director, and he focuses a lot on photography and DPing and stuff like that, director of photography. Byron does a lot of our producing, and he is the brain behind pretty much all of any big projects that we set out to do. But at the same time, they both have helped me throughout my career as a journalist at the newspaper. Byron was able to work with me on a year-long investigative story at the newspaper called Doctors and Sex Abuse, which ultimately was about how doctors throughout the whole country can pretty much, in some cases, get away with sexually abusing patients and coworkers. And so we did a year-long investigation with our investigative team at the newspaper, where our reporters were on it for more than a year, just studying all throughout the country, looking at board orders, looking at orders on that most people can't find, where doctors would basically be brought up on charges or reprimands for sexually assaulting or doing something inappropriate with a patient or coworker. And we found all these records and we exposed them all. And I did all the video work, where I went to 15 different states and interviewed 65 people by myself, unfortunately. But it was fun. It was hard. And then Byron came in to help me take 65 interviews and basically tell a story within, I had 2 weeks to edit it. And so he helped me produce the video series that that went along with this investigation back in 2016. And the whole entire investigation ultimately was a finalist for a Pulitzer, which was one of the biggest honors in my career. So to have been able to work with my brother on that project was really awesome. And then just recently, the first full feature documentary that me and Tyson were able to work on for the newspaper just won an Emmy, which was my second Emmy couple months ago. And that was The Imperfect Alibi, which told the story of a 35-year-old murder down in South Georgia. And our reporter, Joshua Sharp, ultimately broke the case and helped get an innocent man out of prison after 20 years. And so we, the filmmakers, me and Tyson, myself, spent a couple of months working on that production down in South Georgia and produced a short documentary. And so a lot of my work at the newspaper for the past 21 years, outside the newspaper for the past 21 years as a documentarian, as a journalist, in some way or form has been with my brothers, Byron and Tyson, or with arguably the best journalists in the country, if not in this world. And I'm not like even trying to exaggerate or I mean, literally I work with the best journalists in the business. You know what I'm saying? So many great journalists that we get to pull from and work with on a regular basis at the newspaper that makes my job as a documentary very easy, because I come in, they tell me the story, we do the interviews, we kind of take the story that the reporters are doing and tell it visually, basically. And so these journalists at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution are just, magnificent. It's like, being a director and all you do is continually work with Oscar-worthy writers. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the joy of my job as a film director and a filmmaker at a local newspaper, for that matter. I mean, if you told me 20 years ago that I would be a filmmaker for a local newspaper, I'll be, yeah, okay, that's kind of crazy, but okay. Oddly enough, though, and I'm just rambling on, but oddly enough, though, in my high school yearbook, they ask you the questions. I went to Miramar High School down in South Florida. In my yearbook, it said, ask you, what are your plans after high school? And I wrote to be a filmmaker and work for a major newspaper. And so that's, set your goals out and go for it, and don't be surprised when it happens. You know what I'm saying? So that's my life. That's been my life for 21 years professionally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's got to be so rewarding to do that kind of work.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I became a journalist was because of the work that I saw done during the civil rights movement, or through documentaries. One of the documentaries that changed my life when I saw was I was in middle school. And so it actually came out like early 80s, but by the time I saw it, I was in middle school. It was called Eyes on the Prize. And it was a documentary series that PBS did based on the civil rights movement. And it literally changed my life, like watching visually how to tell a story, not only how to tell a story, but how to tell a story of the civil rights movement. And then the biggest thing that I learned from Eyes on the Prize at the time was Bloody Sunday, which was the day that Representative John Lewis, who was just a young college student at the time, was basically almost beaten to death when all they were doing was protesting in order to have rights, voting rights. And they were beaten, at the foot of the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. And so watching that as a kid and knowing that the visuals are what helped catapult the movement even more, because most people sitting in the comforts of their living room across the country saw for the first time how Black people are really treated in the South, or in this country, period. And so knowing the power of the visuals, power of journalism, power of of giving a voice to people who don't or can't speak for themselves, or feel that they can't speak for themselves. That had always stuck with me as a kid. And so to do it as an adult, to do it for a living, is the biggest reward. You know what I'm saying? One person told me that all we have is the work. You know, the awards, they'll come. If the work is good, the money will come, the awards will come, but all we have is the work. And that's all we need to do, all we should do, and all we should focus on is the work. And so that's the big reward.
That's great. And then one question that came to mind, like while you were talking about all this, was what was like your favorite project that you worked on while you were with the newspaper?
The most fun, the most pressure. That was a project where it's called the Liberator's Widow. It was 2014. I went to Metz, France, with the editor of the newspaper, Kevin Riley. And I say it was fun because once we convinced the newspaper to let me go to France, a local newspaper doing an international story, that just don't make sense. Yes. So once we convinced some of the other editors to allow me to go to France, that was the fun part. The pressure part was going to France with the editor of the newspaper. And then, of course, the most reward out of it was doing a good job, so that the editor of the newspaper was like, you know, I was in good with him for a while. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the story is about a World War II veteran who only spent 14 days in the war. And he was part of a infantry that liberated a city called Metz in France. And they were under German rule at the time. They got in there, and it's like 30 minutes from Germany, from the border of Germany. And so this infantry actually got onto the border, you know, got into Germany. You know what I'm saying? They pushed through. Right when they crossed the border, he got injured and he was sent to England. And it was the toughest 14 days of his entire life. And he never spoke to anybody about it. He never really spoke to his family about it. His name is Eddie Sessions. And he never spoke to anybody about it until he spoke to Kevin Riley. And we did a story about him, and then he passed away. And the year after was the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Metz, where his infantry took over the city from German rule. And so every year in Metz, there is METZ. Every year in the city celebrates Americans liberating them, right? So we went there the 70th year, but we had a visitor with us. It was Eddie's wife, Shirley Sessions. She had never been there. She didn't know much about his time over there. He would never talk to her about it. So she was still mourning his death. And so we went with her to see how much of a hero he was. And she had never experienced it. Their appreciation of Americans and American soldiers over there is unlike anything you'll ever see in your life if you go over there. And so we went over there with other soldiers, other World War II veterans. And what our editors did, or our producers, one of our producers, Scott Peacock, he's like a history vet. He found, back in the day, he found armies would have logs of where their infantries would go. So he found the specific spots that Eddie Sessions spent those 14 days in France. So we took her to specific spots of where her husband spent in France. And we were even on the day, 70 years prior was Thanksgiving. And we were in the very spot that he was on that day. And so it was just an awesome story. And we ended where he was wounded. We found the spot where he was wounded. And that was probably one of my favorite stories to do, work on. I was there as a videographer by myself, photographer by myself, no audio guy, no AD, no producer next to me, just me, the editor of the newspaper, driving a car in a foreign country with 3 cameras mounted to it. and and traveling through France. And so that was tough. That was tough, but it was fun, and we got through it. And so yeah, that was one of my favorite projects to do. Liberator's Widow.
That's a great story. I feel like a lot of the work that you're talking about is like very like deep, rewarding stories. And it's like, I don't know, like for certain people, I feel like it'd kind of be like a lot emotionally sometimes to do some of these. So how do you kind of like deal with that aspect of it? Like, are some stories just like a little bit much, or are you kind of like more cool under that pressure? Or is it...
Nah, I mean, you got to be very cynical and like just a heartless, bastard if you don't feel something. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, you have to like, be able to like know when and where to allow those emotions to take over. You got to keep working, you got to keep shooting. Sometimes you got to keep doing what you do. It's funny that you asked that question too, because I was just talking to somebody. About this, and I was talking to my friend, a friend of mine who works with Ambassador Andy Young. I was telling him how I worked on this documentary that we just released a couple of months ago. We're still in July, or we're almost in August, so it was last month. And so we did a documentary called De-Escalate. And it was basically about a year after the death of Rayshard Brooks here in Atlanta, where an Atlanta police officer shot Rayshard as he was fleeing. And the next day was the 14th day of straight protesting in Atlanta. And so this was the culmination of everything that was going on. It was 14 days since the video of George Floyd being released. It was 14 days of just pure protest throughout the entire country. It was months after Ahmaud Arbery was murdered down in South Georgia. It was months after Breonna Taylor was murdered. So it was a lot going on, right? And so the de-escalation story was about me being on this bridge, I-75 interstate, which is the interstate here in Atlanta, covering negotiations between protesters and a very few amount of Georgia State patrolmen. So I did that. I was covering that, and I never really showed anybody the footage because I couldn't put it in context without telling the story from the Georgia State Patrol officers who were there trying to de-escalate things. And then they actually came to odds with each other and almost got physical with each other because they weren't agreeing on how to go about this negotiation with the protesters. Anyway, at the end of the night, the Wendy's burns down, and Rayshard Brooks was murdered in the parking lot of a Wendy's. And that Wendy's was set on fire and burned down. And I'm shooting it, and I'm shooting this shot of, there's a sign that says RIP Rayshard. And in the background, you see the Wendy's burning down. And all of a sudden, like, it hit me. It just like literally hit me. I put the camera down, I turned around, and I had to cry. I had to cry it out. Like, I literally just cried for like 2 minutes. And then I was like, all right, it's time to go. Because it was like, at that moment, I realized that I was witnessing all of this stuff and I didn't really deal with it like mentally. I didn't really, deal with it. The fact that I'm capturing history here in Atlanta. I'm seeing Black men being murdered. I'm seeing myself in everyone. I'm seeing so much to do at that moment. And it was like those 14 days hit me at that moment when I saw the Wendy's burning down. I was like, man, I gotta go. This is it. I don't care. I really had to tell myself, I don't care what happens after this. I'm leaving. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes you got to do that. You got to like be mindful of where you are mentally and be real with it and be like, you know what? I know that there's a job that needs to be done. There's somebody else going to do it right now. And it's interesting because like with Simone Biles right now, like, she's in the Olympics and everyone thought she was injured. And she was like, you know what? No, I can't do this right now. Like, I need to get right mentally. And it's right because she's flipping in the air and she could fall if her mind ain't right. She could fall down and something be hurt. And then like for me, if I'm out there shooting video and my mind ain't right and I'm not aware of what's going on, like, something could happen to me or my coworkers if I'm not, in the right mindset, you know what I'm saying? In those type of situations. So it's hard, but you know, you gotta yeah, you gotta deal with it. And I think the way I deal with it is being with my family. I have 4 kids and a beautiful wife of 18 years, and they really allow me to like do my job. They allow me to go to work and you know, just do what I do, what I love to do. So you know, that helps me mentally, just coming home to them and just being dad and husband and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I completely understand. That's just having comfort and like knowing like, okay, I get to go back to this and kind of de-escalate for a little bit.
Yep.
I guess going off of that, where do you see, you know, as a journalist, as a videographer, where do you see the future of that going? Just you mentioned the protests during the summer, and obviously in this day and age, there's so much, like everyone has a cell phone, everyone's recording themselves. Obviously, I'm kind of thinking like to the January 6th thing, all that kind of work. Like, can you just speak on like where you see like the future of journalism and videography and reporting on stories like that?
What's helpful is as a journalist is people continuing not to be afraid to record. That's helpful. Okay. You see the young lady who recorded George Floyd, and she received a special Pulitzer Prize for what she did. Actually, yesterday, footage of was recorded on cell phone of an Atlanta police officer kicking a person on the floor while that person was handcuffed, belly down, no threat at all. And he kicks that person right in the face. And so it helps us, I say that it helps us as reporters, despite what people say, oh, it's a liberal this, a liberal that, and all this stuff. And then despite all that, keep recording. It helps us get the story right. Now, I will say, keep recording, but people watching the video, watch the video, but also be patient to get the story right. That's important too, because the most important part of a journalist's job is to get the story right. We do live in an age where everything is now. Everything got to be done right now. We got to see it right now. We got to have it right now. We got to see. That's just life, I guess. Back in the day when it was just print journalism, it was the fight of who was going to get the story, who got scooped first. Those tendencies and those actions have not left. They only heightened in life. But the most important thing is making sure the story is correct. Because I could look at a video where, something happens and make a decision personally on what I think that video is. But if I don't know the whole story, then it's not helpful. You know what I'm saying? It's not helpful to the community. It's not helpful to the people involved in the video. It's not helpful to anyone really if we don't know the full story. Some videos is just blatant. George Floyd, that's just blatant. But I would just say let journalists do their job. If you've got videos, we're gonna get to the bottom of it. You know what I'm saying? Especially print journalists. I'm a little biased, but but I know some folks, boy. I know some TV folks, man, like Nicole Carr and like I know folks that like they just, boy, I want to say the wrong thing, but it's like they get to it. They get to the bottom of it, and it's undeniable sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where I see the future of continuing to record, and with that, allowing journalists who are really trained in getting to the bottom of things to do their job, but also people who do the recording get to the bottom of it too. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I would say is just, I see us doing more of that. But we just got to be we got to be cautious as well. You know what I'm saying? Because people could make anything look like anything with video sometimes. So yeah.
Thank you. That's a great message.
Mhm.
Going off of what you just said,
Mhm.
I was wondering, you talk about like getting out like the story quick, but also getting it right. Do you think it's more important, especially like with competition, like the journalism industry? Is it more important to like really just get it right, or try to like beat out your competitors while still being like effective?
It is always better to get it right. Always. Always, 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 always. There are ways to report things quickly of something that happened as it's happening. It's just called breaking news. And then a lot of times what happens, what people get upset with us is with journalists, they are going off of what they're being fed by their sources, whether it's police sources, whether it's other type of sources, political sources. They're being fed certain sources. Now, some organizations don't allow you to report on things unless you could name a source. Some organizations don't care. I mean, I could sit here and say, such and such called me just a second ago and said that LeBron James is moving to Atlanta. Does this mean LeBron James is coming to the Atlanta Hawks? Who knows? He might be done with the Lakers, but I just got off this phone with a very credible source that said LeBron James is coming to Atlanta. Now, we know for damn sure LeBron James ain't coming to Atlanta. Right? But if I'm a sports journalist who has been in the business for a long time and have a lot of sports, sources and stuff like that, I can say whatever I want. You know what I'm saying? Some people do, but that would damage his credibility. But at the same time, there's some organizations that like that fire. They like, people like that, oh, you heard what he said, man, shoot, that might be true. And they do that with politics too. One man here in Georgia, he's been retired for a couple of years. He would go off a rant on things that he heard from people that he know in Georgia politics. And I'm not talking about my friend. I'm talking about somebody else from another organization. But but yeah, I mean, you have people that are quick to want to get feed. They're being pressured. We got to have so many views every day. We got to have so many likes. The fact that we live for likes right now is really not the best thing in the world. I would say that's the reason why I say that is because, one, if we sit here and live off of likes, I mean, that's just the same as somebody like only caring what other people think. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I care about whether or not my name is correct on something, or my name is on something that's correct. Than just putting anything out there. You know what I'm saying? So I would say it's always important to have the correct story, but at the same time, there are ways to report things as it's happening. You know what I'm saying? That's just called breaking news, like I said. But yeah, so that's my opinion about it.
Definitely having like the right story is always like the best, at least in my opinion, or it should be in everybody's opinion, just to have the truth about anything. But I do feel like nowadays we do get a lot of just quick stuff coming out all the time, and it kind of jumbles up like our sense of truth because we don't know who's credible and who's not. Mm-hmm. So for a professional in the business,
what's
how
funny
would
is
somebody like us go about like navigating that?
What's funny about credibility, being credible, is the people who are credible are viewed as not being credible, and the people that aren't credible are viewed as credible, which is the weirdest thing in the world right now. With print journalism and a lot of broadcast journalism, local journalism is, for me, the most credible part of journalism right now. Local journalism, like, you're not gonna get more credible than that. That's just my opinion. Because there's more pressure by TV ratings on a national level and radio ratings on a national level to have the eyes and ears stay at a certain number, whereas local journalism is focused on this area. So It's focus, focus, right? And we don't, there's no room to be like, just putting stuff out there just to be putting it out there just for numbers. There's no room for that in print journalism. And so that's just my opinion about that. What was the last part of your question though?
What would be the best way for people to, like, especially like our age, like I know going on Twitter, Instagram, like what do you think would be the best way for somebody to find like the actual like source that they're looking for that would be like the most truthful, if that's possible?
So I did answer your question. Yeah, listen, let me tell y'all something. How, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, man? Steven?
I'm 21.
And what about you, Joseph?
22.
21 and 22. So, man, you literally wasn't born when I started working at the newspaper, Steven. I'm going to say this, and I hope a lot of young cats, young people y'all age will hear this and trust me when I say this. You can never go wrong with print journalism and the newspaper. And I know I'm biased because I work for the Atlanta Journal newspaper. Yeah, but I'm really honestly speaking. What I said earlier about people who focus on certain things, in a local level, those are the things that people your age need to start worrying about even more. Right now, your generation is more focused, it seems, in my opinion, on a national level on things, right? Which is cool. It's fine. It's understandable. But you guys got to start focusing things more locally. What's happening in the community that your apartment is in? I don't know if you're in an apartment or not, but what is happening within even that community that you're in, within that neighborhood that you're living in, within that street that you're living in, with that the local businesses that you go down to and grab some wings from, and you go here and grab, what's happening with those businesses? What's happening with the local government in that area? You know what I'm saying? What's happening with the sheriffs and the police chiefs and in that city? We need to be focused on the national level, what's going on, right? We need to have those conversations. We need to know what's going on in DC. But really, honestly, your generation needs to start focusing on what's happening immediately around you. And the people that could tell you what's happening immediately around you, more than anybody else, more than Anderson Cooper can, more than Sean Hannity can, more than any national person, the people that could tell you what's happening right outside your door, is local journalists. And I'm not just talking about like yes, TV reporters are great journalists, and they get out there and they go interview the people and they knock on the doors and they get those stories done too, right? But they sometimes only have a minute and a half, 2 minutes to tell their story. But print journalists got a long damn page to tell you everything that's going on. Open the damn page, read everything that's going on in that page. You know what I'm saying? Go on the site, read everything that's on that story, because what's happening is we as a newspaper in other cities, whether it's New York, whether it's Miami, whether it's Houston, whether it's South Carolina, these local newspapers are busting their asses, and excuse my language, but they are busting their asses to tell you guys what's happening right outside your door. And if you are more engaged and more in tune and understand what's happening right outside your door, then you could truly start making like a bigger change. As you know, it doesn't start from the top to the bottom. You got to start with you and going out. You know what I'm saying? So that's my only focus. And that's the reason why I stayed local. Like, that's the reason why I always wanted to stay local, is because I felt like there is more of an impact. You know what I'm saying? There is more of an impact focusing what's going on outside my door. You know what I'm saying? So that's my advice for this generation who that stay on their phones and on Twitter and on Instagram. It's like, use those social medias for what they're used for. Don't use it for, well, in my opinion, like, don't think that you're going to get all your information from that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not realistic. You know what I'm saying? So
honestly, like I've heard like people our age are like, yo, I get all my news from like Twitter now. Like I don't watch TV or nothing or read the newspaper or anything like that. And I'm like, it's probably not the best thing, but I mean, I understand it. It's quick. But
it's quick. Yeah, it's quick. It's there. You can spend time on it, but I don't know. I think find the thing that's most important to you. And what the funniest thing that I used to think when I was young, man, I moved to Atlanta in '96. I was only interested in entertainment stuff. I was only interested in films. I wanted to be a film critic. I was only interested in that, right? And I didn't think politics really dealt, I didn't really think politics, I didn't know anything about bills and laws and stuff like that. I really didn't care about it that much. When I saw something that I felt like was important to me, I'd be like upset about it, but I really didn't, and then when I would go in to vote, it'd be just like, all right, at that time, it was like, I knew who the president I want, click, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to laws and stuff, I really didn't think it bothered me or I didn't think it affected me. And so now as an adult, it's like, man, I wish I would have paid more attention to some of that stuff. But yeah, it's like, it's important. It's important to expand your appetite of information because I could feed you anything on Twitter. I could show you the craziest stuff on Twitter and it's not true. You know what I'm saying? And so don't just go to one place for your information because that's just not realistic. You know what I'm saying?
Going off of that with advice for younger generations, do you have a recommendation for a good documentary?
I would recommend the Central Park 5 by Ken Burns. Really, anything Ken Burns has done is top notch to me, in my opinion. Some people, they be hating on Ken, man, but that's my dude, man. I like his stuff. I'm into a lot of like civil rights stuff, documentaries and historic documentaries. And the one on Malcolm X, it was a documentary series called Who Killed Malcolm X? That was awesome. This documentary series called The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. That was dope. Man, so many good documentaries, man. So I like historic documentaries. Now, if you like crime documentaries, like Who Done It and stuff like that, the Imperfect Alibi was really good. But so like those are good documentaries too. Like I like certain crime documentaries about who done it and stuff like that. That's why I like that Who Killed Malcolm X, because that really got to behind it. It was really good. So yeah, those are some that I like.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because that kind of reminds me, like when I was younger, I remember my great grandmother had this documentary of Malcolm X. Mm-hmm. It was on VHS, so it was kind of like,
you know what a VHS is?
Barely. Like it was black and white videos. I was trying to watch it because it was like a little fuzzy at times. I'm like, it was super interesting. It was like chock full of information. I was like, wow, it's like finding like a time capsule almost, just like looking back.
When I was a kid, my son is 13, and when I was his age, I was handed the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read that book when I was 13 years old, and boy, when I tell you, it was tough because you got to think. All right, so if you can see, this is my dad right here. He was African American man, and my mom, she was a white woman. She was born in Austria, but she's American, and so reading the autobiography of Malcolm X at 13 and being the child of a white woman was very confusing at that time. I was like, Mom, your people held us down. My mom was like, boy, shut up and go in the room. But that was a real tough book to read at such a young age, but it shaped me a lot. Like you said, it shaped me a lot about the country and how the country viewed African American people. It taught me a lot about how I should view myself as a Black man, how I should respect my family, how I should respect the Black woman. And so that really shaped me when I was a kid. So like I took that in a lot. I refer to it a lot in life. Like everything I'm doing, I refer a lot to what Malcolm X said, as a man, not so much as policies and views and stuff like that. It was mostly about like as a man. Yeah.
Joseph, you have anything from like a videographer standpoint that you could kind of dive into a little bit?
I mean, I just recently graduated from Loyola University Chicago.
Nice.
In their film program. So
congratulations, bro.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know. I guess just like
what type of work, what type of filmmaking do you want to do?
I'm interested in narrative stuff right now, but
Mhm.
you know, I'm 21 or 22, so
no, that's cool.
Still finding my my
Yeah.
path, but
just and I don't think I really explained said this, but so I'm very much interested in narratives as well.
Yeah.
So me and my brothers, we have done narratives. We have documentaries is like our wheelhouse, but we just did a film, a short film that we released last year during the pandemic, called Invasion. It was a short film about a man who had three home invaders, and he calls 911 and tells 911 that he killed three men that broke into his home. And then we find out that those three men are still alive. And he gives them 15 minutes to prove to him why their Black lives matter. And it was a very intense moment, because not just that Black lives matter. That wasn't the root of it. It was three Black men. He was white. The homeowner was white, but it was like just why their lives matter. Period. You know what I'm saying? But specifically, these three men were Black. And what happens is in America is a lot of times people will automatically see Black men and think the absolute worst without understanding why they are where they are. Everybody makes assumptions about everyone, but when a Black man is the victim of something, the first thought is sometimes, well, what did he do? Or why was he there? Or should he have been there? Or why did he do that? Or if he wouldn't have did this, then that wouldn't have happened to him. We're working on a TV series right now, so we do a lot of stuff outside of just documentaries as well. So yeah.
Well, what is it like working so closely with your family on projects like that?
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's shit. Yeah, but nah, working with my brothers are cool, man. It's like, we very passionate dudes. Overall, I think what's cool is we trust each other's creativity, and we trust each other's like direction on things. You know what I'm saying? A lot of our work will always say directed by the Horne brothers, directed by this, edited by the Horne brothers, da, da, da. And so it's because like we all have input on everything, and we fight a lot. Don't get me wrong. We still fight like we're 5-year-olds, but when it's all said and done, the outcome is pretty damn good pretty much, if not all the time. And that's because you got three minds that are working on one thing rather than just one person, working on it by himself. You know what I'm saying? There's no way I have 2 Emmys and a Pulitzer finalist and a living without my brothers. You know what I'm saying? So so that's the good part about it.
I don't know how I'd be working with siblings. I know like it seems like it could be really good. I'm thinking of it in my head, like I only have one sister. I was like, it'd be good, but I know that there's times where
It's funny though. What's funny is like the dynamic is just as typical and as stereotypical of what it would be like with 3 brothers, right? Just as typical as you could think. You have the older brother, Tyson, you know, he's 6 years older than me, and he's 3 years. We're all 3 years apart. You have Tyson, who's the oldest, and me, Byron, and I usually like listen to Tyson, and you have to like, you know, hear what he's saying, and we gotta like let it sink in first, because most of the time what he's speaking is not exactly like how we want to hear it, but most of the time it's right. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta like kind of just sit back sometimes and listen to it. But most of the time we don't sit back and listen to it. We just like, rah, rah, rah. You know, then my middle brother, Byron, he looks like Ice Cube, bro. Like for real. Like Ice Cube looked at him and said, yeah, he does look like me. Like I'm not, no cap, like for real. He looks just like Ice Cube, right? So his face is always in South Central mode. You know what I'm saying? Like his face is always like, like this, you know what I'm saying? So we got to get around that sometimes. And then me, I'm always like up here. I'm the little brother. I got to prove myself. I got to, y'all listen to me, man. I'm listening to me. You know what I'm saying? So they don't ever want to listen to me. So it's very stereotypical as, brothers working together as you could think of. But it's fun though, So it's fun traveling the world with them and having experiences together. And our kids are pretty damn close. You know what I'm saying? There's 11 kids between us. And like my oldest nephew just left here. And I mean, we're really, it's a close-knit family, and there's no other way we would have it.
I guess like the last thing that we'll leave you with, which is kind of like the whole point of like the podcast show, is your last bit of advice to younger people who are going into your field of work. So whether doing documentaries or journalism in general, what's something that you would tell them like as they're getting started to kind of help them progress and get to where you're at today?
What matters is, can you tell a story? Can you compose a shot? And can you put the shots in the stories, and can you expose correctly? It's like learning those crafts, learning those skills are important. I learned those skills not in college. I didn't learn any of those skills in college. I learned those skills doing it, just doing it, and not allowing anyone to tell me that I needed to go to, you got to do it this way. You got to learn it this way. You got to do it this way. You know what I'm saying? You can't do this unless you do that. That's BS. And there's people proving that. You know what I'm saying? There's people proving that that's BS. You know what I'm saying? YouTube is awesome, man. You know what I'm saying? It's awesome. It's an awesome world to learn. It's an awesome learn to expose yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, never. That's why I say never wait. You don't need a distribution company. You don't need these big time producers to affirm that you're good. Like, what's going to affirm that you're good is that people, flock to it. You know what I'm saying? And they say you're doing a good story. So it's like, don't let anybody stop you from learning, stop you from working, and stop you from putting it out there. You know what I'm saying? And don't be your own, don't be your own hater. You know what I'm saying? Don't like, man, I can't do that, man. I can't do this. Yeah. You just being your own hater. I think the last thing I wanted to say was don't be prideful. When I say don't be prideful is, even though you're smart, even though you're good, even though you're young and everybody, these companies think that you guys are, the answer to all their financial problems because of how much you're on the phones and how much you're on Instagram and on these social media platforms. Even though you have all that going for you, do not be prideful. Don't think that you know it all, because you don't know shit. I'm 43 years old and I don't know shit. I don't know everything. I don't know, like, I'm still going to YouTube to learn how to, do certain things. You know what I'm saying? I still seek knowledge. I still ask questions. I still I'm looking, I'm learning. And so I try not to be too prideful to accept help, you know what I'm saying? Or accept the fact that I don't know something, you know what I'm saying? So I got to go find out and go seek it. So just don't be prideful is my answer. It's like, just as long as you don't be prideful, don't think you know everything, and you're willing to learn.
Well, thank you so much for just everything that you talked about, telling your story and giving such great advice to people our age and everything. Because I know like a lot of us need to hear it. just to help us out. And that's the whole point of this, is just to have some sort of understanding of where we need to go and how to get there. And it always helps like hearing someone older who's been through it before. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. And yeah, man, I'm always open to holler at people and, you know, say what I answer a question. So yeah, I could be easily found on the interwebs of the atmospheres out there.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to Have a Map. Thank you, Ryan, for everything. And thank you, Joseph, for co-hosting. And we'll see you guys next time, I guess.
Thank you guys. Great pleasure to be with you guys.